CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is headed to Ethiopia for the first stop on his traditional Africa tour. Somalia orders the top United Nations official to leave the country. And what South Africa intends to achieve from its non-permanent seat on the UN Security Council. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. Also coming up this hour, Egypt to establish a Belt and Road Research Center in collaboration with China's Renmin University. And we focus on the accomplishments of women in Africa over the past year and what the new year portends. Well, in our top story this hour, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi is kicking off the new year with his traditional Africa tour. He starts the official visit in Ethiopia later today. While there, he'll visit the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa. Now, Wang Yi is also expected to visit Burkina Faso, the Gambia and Senegal. The Chinese Foreign Minister has chosen Africa for the first overseas visit each year over the past few years. And of course, this speaks volumes about the great importance China places to its relationship with Africa. And let's get you more on Wang Yi's trip. CGTN's Girum Chala joins us live now on the line from Addis Ababa. Girum, of course, the Chinese Foreign Minister is expected in Ethiopia later today. What can you tell us about his itinerary?
Hello, Lindy. So, Foreign Minister Wang Yi's traditional visit, as you've said earlier, to Africa will start in 2019, the first one here in Ethiopia. He is going to be here tonight. And tomorrow morning, he's going to meet the Foreign Minister of Ethiopia, Gabriel. And later in the afternoon, he is also scheduled to meet Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and President Sahle Zode. Wang Yi, Lindy, is here to continue bilateral efforts between Ethiopia and China. As you know, Ethiopia and China have a comprehensive strategic partnership, the highest level of relationship the two countries have. And it has been fruitful so far. They want to strengthen more. They want to collaborate more on areas of infrastructure, diplomacy, and other sectors. So we'll be getting more about his visit, but already there is a preparation to receive Mr. Wang Yi here in Ethiopia.
And of course, Girum, bilateral ties will be one thing that Wang Yi will focus on. But of course, you know, Addis Ababa is home to the African Union headquarters. We understand he'll be visiting there too. What does this suggest about the relationship between China and the AU?
So, China is, again, a strategic partner to the African Union. The multilateral relationship can be seen here. As China has relations with individual African states, it also has a strong relationship with the African Union. To be more specific, on Agenda 2063, the 50-year plan of the continent of economic growth and peace and security and others, China is the first in the one country that came forward and, signed an agreement to collaborate and make this dream a reality. In different sectors, including peace and security, as I said, for example, China is active in the continent. On Africa CDC, the Center for Disease Control, China is the front runner in diplomacy and other sectors. So Mr. Wang Yi, when he comes here and meets the officials of the Commission, he'll be discussing more about strengthening this relationship. And remember, the African Union is undertaking a reform, and China wants to support in any way that the Union wants it. So the African Union is also, as I heard earlier, is looking forward to this engagement with Mr. Wang Yi.
Certainly setting the tone for China-Africa relations in the new year. Thank you so much, Girum Chala, joining us there on the line from Addis Ababa. Now let's go to some news from the Horn of Africa nation of Somalia. The country's government has ordered the top United Nations official to leave. Nicholas Haysom, who is the special representative of the UN Secretary General for Somalia, has been accused of interfering with Somalia's national sovereignty. That's according to a statement released by the Foreign Affairs Ministry. Now, the UN official has been effectively declared persona non grata, and the decision from the Somali government comes just days after Haysom raised concerns over the actions of UN-supported Somali security forces. And still in Somalia, 3 people have been injured in the capital Mogadishu after al-Shabaab militants attacked the UN compound with a series of mortar shells. The United Nations envoy to Somalia and the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres have both strongly condemned this attack. Now, the incident took place on Tuesday evening and 2 UN staff and a contractor were injured in the shelling. According to the UN, the attack amounts to a violation of international humanitarian law. Both the UN and the African Union mission to the country have bases located inside the heavily fortified airport compound. Well, let's bring you more on both of these developments in Somalia. We're joined by CGTN's Abdulaziz Billo from the Somali capital of Mogadishu. Abdulaziz, let's start with the expulsion of this UN official. Now, of course, he is the representative of the UN Secretary General of the UN. Has he officially left Somalia? And just tell us more about the reasons for his expulsion.
Well, Lindy, we have made contact with the UN mission here in Somalia known as ANSOM. I have talked to the public information officer who has confirmed to me that Mr. Nicholas Haysom, the top UN diplomat to Somalia, is not in the country at the moment and was not in the country at that time when the Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued that strongly worded statement declaring Mr. Haysom persona non grata. So we can confirm that he's not in the country, and we can also confirm that he was declared persona non grata by the Somali government. Now, coming back to the reasons for his expulsion, is the Foreign Ministry said that Mr. Haysom violated international and diplomatic protocols, that is some of the Vienna Agreement on diplomacy. And coming back to the exact reasons as to why he was expelled is because he issued a strong statement the other day with the 12 questions. I have it right now in front of me. All these 12 questions are directed to senior government officials and even junior officials working for the federal government of Somalia, as well as regional states from Southwest. Now, some of the key points to highlight in this letter from Haysom that triggered the knee-jerk reaction from the Somali government is that he asked the federal government to explain the basis of why Mukhtar Robo, the former al-Shabaab commander, was arrested initially in Baidoa, and why there's no direct judgment given to him, why he's not been taken to court for sentencing or for his case to be heard. And also he talked about the violence that erupted after his arrest, explaining why the police acted in the manner they acted, what sort of weapons they used during the clashes, who gave the order. So some of all these things, Somalia sees it as a violation of its own sovereignty, because it feels like it's in charge of the country, it's in charge of the national security, and the UN is just there as a support body, just as the name says, the UN support mission to Somalia. So the fact that he raised all these questions that are directly linked to senior and junior government officials, Somalia is of the view that why is Mr. Haysom trying to violate the terms of and the sovereignty of the country. So he has been declared persona non grata at this stage.
Well, as you said, the UN is a support body, but certainly a key one to Somalia's government. Is the country at all worried that this expulsion of Haysom could result in some kind of hostile response from the UN?
Well, that has been the main topic of discussion after the statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. If you look at social media and if you talk to analysts here in Mogadishu, opinion has been divided because many people are of the view that the government acted in the right manner, because the individual in question, the top UN diplomat, violated sovereignty. So even opposition lawmakers are siding, most of them, with the government. They're saying as long as the issue is about Somalia's sovereignty, they will always side with Somalia. But definitely definitely there are expected to be general reactions from the United Nations. But then again, this statement comes at a time when the New Year festivities is still underway. Most civil servants and most UN diplomats have not yet returned back to their workstations. So it is expected that there will be consequences, because UN has been actively involved in Somalia since the fall of the Somali central government in 1991, and has been very, very strategic in assisting Somalia in capacity building, state formation. It's also supporting security institutions here, creation of government institutions, rule of law, democracy, constitution making process. So the UN virtually is supporting Somalia in all aspects, and the step taken by Somalia will definitely have serious consequences. But then one thing also to note is African Union mission in Somalia, AMISOM, has also been asked by Mr. Haysom as well as the Ethiopian embassy here to explain the role that they had in the arrest of Mukhtar Robo. So all these things, the reasons as to why prompted the Somali government to declare him persona non grata.
And Abdulaziz, let's just turn now to that attack on the UN compound that took place on Tuesday evening. What do we know so far, and has there been any change to the casualty figures?
Well, the casualty figure still remains the same. 2 UN staff were injured, including 1 contractor working with the United Nations. Now, the militant group Al-Shabaab was quick to claim responsibility for the attack that happened at the UN compound in Mogadishu. They are saying that they attacked the facility with 7 mortar shells, and this was confirmed by a statement also from Mr. Haysom. The top UN diplomat's office said that it violated the international law, the fact that UN mission was attacked using mortar shells. Now, it's not the first time that these kind of shells have landed in the heavily fortified airport compound that is also home to the African Union mission in Somalia, AMISOM, UN, and most foreign diplomats, and also the Mogadishu International Airport. So there's been investigation has been launched here by the government, but Al-Shabaab is saying its specific target was the United Nations, and it's like a welcoming message for 2019 to Somalia's international partners that Al-Shabaab can attack not just government forces or the Somali government, but it can also attack UNISOM, AMISOM right in the heavily fortified base at the airport.
Indeed, a rude awakening with which to start the year. Thanks so much, Abdulaziz Billah, joining us there live from Mogadishu. Now, South Africa has assumed a non-permanent seat in the UN Security Council. The country's International Relations and Cooperation Minister, Lindiwe Sisulu, says ending conflicts on the African continent will be a key priority. Other issues expected to be addressed include the plight of women and children in conflict areas and coordinated responses to the rise of extremist groups in Africa. Well, for more on this, let's go live now to Johannesburg, where CGTN's Angela Coppola is standing by with more. Angela, to begin with, just tell us more about the main focus areas for South Africa as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council.
Lindy, there are 3 issues that will be the focus points for the South African delegation when they take up that non-permanent seat. In fact, they took it up yesterday. First of all, we're looking at unilateralism versus multilateralism. This is the drive that's come through from the BRICS meeting grouping that have been focusing on that unilateralism approach, basically saying to the US that they need to start dealing with the rest of the world and stop looking inwardly. So that's one key focus. Secondly, the gender issue is going to be a key priority for Lindiwe Sisulu, the JOCO minister in South Africa, who says that it's going to be part of most of the resolutions that they're hoping to have adopted during their tenure. So it's about gender as well, and making sure that women issues are brought to the fore and are dealt with and are part of any UN resolutions. And then thirdly, it's around peace and security. That's a global approach that they're taking, but they are looking at what's happening on the African continent as well. So those are the 3 key issues that the South Africans will be looking at during their tenure. Lindy?
And Angela, we know, of course, that this is the 3rd time that South Africa has, in fact, had a seat on the UN Security Council. Do you think South Africa's presence on the Council membership will affect the fact that Africa will help bring African issues to the forefront and make them priority issues for the Security Council?
Well, South Africa has said from the beginning that they are going to focus on African issues. The key one is that they're also dedicating this tenure to the philosophy adopted by Nelson Mandela, and that was one of peace and security through dialogue and through inclusive dialogue. So that's going to be a key focus. Also, the South Africans have said very specifically that they're going to be adopting and introducing the initiative about clearing the continent of guns by 2020. It's a key AU initiative that's going to be driven by the South Africans and obviously put in place in the UN and going to be a key focus point there. And there's one other key issue that's also going to be adopted, and that's the fact that South Africa wants to ensure that the UN works with other regional bodies. And here specifically they're talking about the AU and getting closer to the AU and trying to coordinate priorities that the AU has with those priorities that are sitting at the UN. It's going to be a tough ask because there are other interested parties there. And then, of course, we're looking at free trade and getting the African countries involved in that Africa Free Trade Agreement and getting them to work with other UN members. So we're looking at peace and security, and we're looking at trade across the continent. Lindy?
Some tough tasks ahead. Thank you so much, Angela Coppola, joining us there live from Johannesburg. Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Coming up, the 40th anniversary of the Message to Compatriots in Taiwan is commemorated in Beijing. And we focus on the accomplishments of women in Africa in the past year and what the new year portends.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice. My home country lies at the foot of Africa, the southernmost tip of our beautiful continent, and the unique point at which two great oceans meet. Now, on a clear day in Cape Town, you can just make out Robben Island, the place where Nelson Mandela was jailed for so long. South Africa has changed so much in the years since then, but it is this country's history that shaped me and took me into reporting. I'm inspired by Africa's men and women of courage. It's the everyday hero who brings out my passion. The creatives, the decision makers, the risk takers who are shaping a bright African future. I see them in Cape Town. I see them in the pulsating city of Johannesburg. I see them across the continent, and I know our time has come.
CGTN is a platform where African voices can speak for themselves and take their stories to the world. My name is Lindy Mtongana, and I'm a news anchor and reporter for CGTN.
It starts in China, where a gathering has been held in Beijing to commemorate the 40th anniversary of the issuing of the Message to Compatriots in Taiwan. In his keynote speech, Chinese President Xi Jinping stressed that achieving the country's greatness, national rejuvenation and cross-strait reunification is the trend of history and can never be blocked by anyone or any force. Zheng Yubing has the details.
The 40th anniversary gathering in the Great Hall of the People began with greetings and heartfelt wishes, stressing the bonds across the straits.
Nobody or no party can negate the natural attachment and national identity shared by people of the two sides, featuring our deep blood bonds and affinity to each other.
In his speech, President Xi stressed that Chinese matters should be decided by the Chinese people.
The issue of Taiwan is part of China's domestic policies. It is in the core interest of China and concerns the feelings of the Chinese people. Any foreign interference is intolerable.
President Xi also said though the two sides have different social systems, it will not stop the reunification process.
One country, two systems was raised to accommodate Taiwan's reality and safeguard the interests and benefits of Taiwan compatriots.
President Xi warned that China reserved the right to use all necessary measures against intervention by any outside forces, as well as activities by the very few Taiwan independent separatists. However, he emphasized that such measures will absolutely not be applied to Taiwan compatriots. Talks are open to all interested in peaceful negotiations.
Only by replacing confrontation with dialogue, replacing disputes with cooperation, replacing zero-sum games with win-win outcomes, can our cross-strait relations enjoy long-term stability.
He stressed, reunification is a historical conclusion drawn over the past 70 years of the development of cross-strait relations, and a must for the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation in a new era. The gathering expresses good wishes for the better cross-strait relation and will lay a more solid foundation for the peaceful reunification of China. Zheng Yibing, CGTN, Beijing.
And Chinese President Xi Jinping has outlined 5 proposals to solve the Taiwan issue. First, making joint efforts for national rejuvenation and peaceful reunification. Second, the one country, two systems policy as the best solution, as it allows Taiwan to keep its current social system unchanged upon unification. Third, adhering to the One China principle, stressing that the mainland and Taiwan belong to one China. Fourth, deepening integration between the two sides to lay the foundation for reunification. And fifth, connecting hearts and promoting people-to-people exchanges across the strait. Right, let's go to Brazil now, where Jair Bolsonaro has been sworn in as the 38th president of the country. This amid concerns that his radical views could isolate Latin America's biggest economy. Lucrecia Franco reports from Brasilia.
Tens of thousands of Brazilians attended the swearing-in of right-wing firebrand Jair Bolsonaro as their new president in the country's capital, Brasilia. There was tight security as his motorcade made its way along wide promenades amid pomp and regalia. Expectations were high among his supporters.
I hope that Jair Bolsonaro is going to improve the economy and the public security. That were his biggest campaign promises.
Thank God we are getting rid of the leftists that mocked the Brazilian people and destroyed our economy. Thank God Bolsonaro was elected.
Speaking at the National Congress, the 63-year-old former army captain called for unity.
I call on every congressman to help me in the mission of restoring and lifting the country, freeing it for good from corruption, from crime, from economic irresponsibility, and from ideological submission.
12 foreign leaders attended the event. But Bolsonaro and his inauguration team left leaders from Nicaragua, Venezuela and Cuba off the guest list, a decision some analysts say could isolate Brazil from the rest of the region. It is the first time regional neighbors with diplomatic relations with Brazil have not been invited to a presidential inauguration.
He's being very ideological, and he said that his government wouldn't be ideological, they wouldn't be biased, they would try to make more trade with more countries and so on, and he's doing it the other way around.
Two of Brazil's largest left-wing parties, the Workers' Party and the Social Liberty Party, boycotted the ceremony. Bolsonaro's rise to the presidency comes at a critical time for Brazil, with soaring crime rates, a sluggish economy and open wounds from corruption scandals among its most pressing issues. These are the challenges the new president's supporters believe will be met by increased police and military force, downsizing government and privatizing state-run businesses. Lucrecia Franco, CGTN, Brasilia.
Well, as we start the new year, let's revisit some issues that stood out in 2018. Women in Africa continued to struggle against violence and discrimination, but they also beat the odds, with women and members of the LGBTQ community in South Africa creating their own exclusive party spaces where they say they can be free of harassment and judgment. Let's take a look.
Every year, they fight to break down the barriers of gender and patriarchal biases. In South Africa, the issue of women's rights came at the forefront in 2018. Thousands protested against gender violence. The country has the highest level of violence against women, girls and children. Many fall victim to rape and murder.
We are tired. They are killing us, our kids. Our kids are raped every single day. Today, it must end.
South African women further amplified their voices with the introduction of safe spaces. Here, women and the LGBTQ community can party without fear for their safety, harassment or judgment.
The women here celebrate who they are. The queers here celebrate who they are. I'm a non-gender. I identify as nothing. I'm non-binary essentially. But in winter I transform into a man. In summer I'm a woman. But my fears still remain the same.
I think that we have reclaimed the space, and so the men who do come are aware of the fact that this space has been claimed by women for the night.
Give birth to
In Nigeria, her word has become the latest play. The drama is a collection of monologues that portray African women challenging social, political and cultural stereotypes.
My story is the unlimited potential story, which is just a woman asking and telling the audience that if the audience invested and believed in her, where would she be by now? You know, if she had not imbibed all those stories that you as a woman, you cannot do this, you as a woman, you cannot do that, here's where you should do, here's how you should sit, here's how loud you should talk, here's how far you should go, here's how much you should, here's how far you should aspire, right? So she asks the question, if I didn't listen to all that, if you all believed in me and told me I could go far, where will I be now?
Attitudes concerning the role and place of women in African society will continue to be challenged in the years to come. Thuli Shabalala, CGTN.
And turning to technological matters, Africa has seen a boom in significant breakthroughs and innovations, and in 2018, a number of young innovators showed why homegrown solutions could be the best answer to many of the continent's developmental challenges.
This year saw the continent embrace a mix of homegrown innovation as well as technology invented elsewhere but adapted for local use. South Africa launched an ATM-like vending machine to dispense medicines to patients with chronic illnesses.
This machine is helping me when it comes to time and helps me when it comes to standing because we are sick. We get dizzy at times because it gets very full. With this machine, you can just get here and punch in your numbers and take your medication and go home.
Malawi, on the other hand, began using drones to implement interventions and stem the spread of cholera. The disease critically hit at least 6 districts following an outbreak in 2018.
It has relieved many things that we didn't know about. As community leaders, we now have a huge task to ensure that our surroundings are clean and tidy.
Minibuses are the backbone of South Africa's transport industry. An estimated $3.7 billion in revenue is generated every year. Skona Kumalo is a 28-year-old tech innovator and one of the drivers of an app that aims to help commuters navigate.
This industry is a gem, it's an actual jewel of South Africa, and how do we increase participation? And the first place that we start is by making it a more pleasant experience.
Over in Cameroon, programmer Zuo Bruno created an internet-free application to track cars. This was birthed when the government shut down the internet during unrest in the country's Anglophone region.
Okay, we've sent an SMS from the owner's phone to the car, and this SMS is telling the car to immobilize, that is to stop the engine from functioning. But of course, the owner can send another SMS telling the car to come back to normalcy. And it can even allow the owner to locate where the car is at any point in time.
Meanwhile, Rwanda is embarking on the world's first blockchain project to track its mining of tantalum. Mobile phones, facial recognition software and GPS tracking are used to follow resources from the mine to a refinery in Macedonia and on to buyers.
Rwanda has demonstrated without a doubt that the minerals coming from Rwanda are conflict-free, and that's not questionable whatsoever. But now what we're looking at is how to continue to demonstrate that with a solution that is cost-effective, that is efficient, and that is adopting also modern technologies that are consistent with how the rest of the world are doing this.
Earth Ranger, also known as the Domain Awareness System, was developed by US philanthropist and Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen. It was as a response to the surge in ivory poaching in Africa.
What we do with DAS is we monitor all our assets, every colored animal, and we also input data, which in turn helps us make decisions and plan operations on when we extract the data and analyze.
The software for Sophia, the world's first humanoid robot, was partly developed by an artificial intelligence research company in Addis Ababa. She even speaks some Amharic. Its leaders hope Ethiopia will take the lead in Africa when it comes to artificial intelligence.
We are in the leading edge of AI and blockchain. But nobody thinks that this image is true. Nobody thinks that this is the reality.
Techies are optimistic that the Ethiopian government's decision to open up the economy will take hold in 2019 and fast-track support and development in the innovation space. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's coming up in your business news. Egypt is set to establish a Belt and Road Research Center in collaboration with China's Renmin University.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Egypt's Ain Shams University has signed an agreement with China's Renmin University to establish the Belt and Road Research Center in Cairo. CGTN's Yasser Hakim explains what its goals are.
It's the third of its kind in the world. The other two Belt and Road Research Centers are in Luxembourg and Russia. The center in Cairo aims at providing research studies on increasing cooperation between China and Egypt.
We have been in talks for a year with Renmin University, the top university in China, and succeeded finally to agree on establishing together this research center. The contract was signed in China, and we have formed the board here, including the best experts in business, economy, law and Chinese studies, to ensure the high-quality service we are targeting.
The center will provide reports to the Chinese and Egyptian governments, state institutions, as well as businesses.
Our main work is to make research and reports for institutions that work under the umbrella of the Belt and Road Initiative. We also provide new ideas and feasibility studies for attractive investment opportunities in Egypt to Chinese businessmen who want to invest here.
Chinese investments in Egypt are in the range of $5 billion. Chinese President Xi Jinping had promised investments would exceed $20 billion in the next few years. And this center has an important role in helping these projects operate smoothly.
The center does not only carry out research, but it also studies the problems that face Chinese projects in Egypt, and we will try to find solutions for it. We will study how to adapt new laws and regulations that will facilitate and attract more Chinese investments into the country. There are many Chinese projects here. Our role is to ensure all problems are solved and all projects are working fine.
The Belt and Road Center will also be issuing regular reports from various sectors: business, economy, politics and social science. The research center is not only working in Egypt, it is also offering its services for African governments and businesses as part of the Belt and Road Initiative in the continent. Yas Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
The Central Bank of Sudan has announced tough monetary policies for 2019. The new measures are expected to boost monetary and financial stability and contribute to sustainable growth. An increase in the sources of foreign exchange is expected despite the effects of the instability in South Sudan. The country has been facing a liquidity crisis due to shortages of foreign exchange reserves. The focus now is mainly on high inflation and exchange rate fluctuations. The Central Bank and the Ministry of Finance have also agreed to cut inflation by increasing export output and foreign exchange rationalization. Last year, Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir announced the printing of new currency denominations to address the liquidity crisis. Tunisian ministers have laid out the details for the government's ambitious digitization project. If executed as planned, this project will dramatically cut administrative procedures in the North African state. CGTN's Adnan Chouachi explains.
The Minister of Communication Technologies and Digital Economy announced the creation of a committee to accelerate digital transition in Tunisia. The committee will work on 5 components.
This includes the implementation of the National Register for Unique Identification that will affect 14 million names, including those of people who have been dead for 30 years, the electronic birth certificate, electronic payment of municipal revenues, the digitization of building permit management, and the creation of an integrated network for local communities.
The Ministry of Higher Education will make the Smart Card available to students to have access to catering services, housing and scholarships.
Online platforms will also be created to offer additional training to students and track their employability after graduation. These platforms require more training of trainers in the digital field and the digitization of diplomas in all specialities.
The Ministry of Employment and Vocational Training noted that her department will work to digitize the system of obtaining the Certificate of Professional Competence, in addition to the creation of vocational training service and entrepreneurship platforms.
The government project is to connect 6,500 schools to broadband internet and to develop the e-registration system for primary and basic schools, in addition to the connection of online tutoring sites for 6th and 9th grade pupils and baccalaureate students.
Under the digitization initiative, state agencies and municipalities will work to launch the electronic birth certificate service and will definitely ban the print certificate in November 2020. During a cabinet meeting this week, Tunisian Premier Youssef Chahed said the digitization of the administration project will be accompanied by other actions like the increase of the broadband internet and securing the entire network by the National Agency for Computer Security. Adnan Chouachi, CGTN, Tunis.
Meanwhile, in Nigeria, there's a growing army of young innovators who are pushing the boundaries of the country's digital economy. The north of the country is home to an increasing number of tech startups with big dreamers who focus on solving pressing social and humanitarian problems. CGTN's Samson Omale filed this report.
These people are the young drivers of Nigeria's future digital economy. They are keen to find ways around barriers and to provide solutions with coding, software development, hardware maintenance, animation, and data management.
Well, I think the ecosystem has been growing and is growing rapidly. Like in April, we did our ecosystem map in 2.2 and we recorded over 80 hubs. But currently, we have over 100 hubs in Nigeria. That tells you a lot.
David Dasar is a 35-year-old CEO of one of northern Nigeria's most successful innovation hubs. 3 years after launching his startup, he says he's excited that young coding experts and software developers are already working for blue-chip companies in Europe remotely from Jos, north-central Nigeria.
Okay, we do incubation. So we have an incubation aspect where we incubate startups. So what we do basically is to help startups from ideation to validation state. And then we have the tech outsourcing unit where companies come to hire talents from here, either remotely or physically.
To provide an environment for innovators to test their ideas and showcase their products, this annual tech conference called the Hackathon also provides potential investors an opportunity to bring new developers on board.
Technology and innovation are transforming Nigeria's entrepreneurship models. Experts say this tech revolution can reshape Nigeria's economy if and only if government provides the right kind of support.
The policy is not allowing the telcos, telecommunication companies, basically, to go into that market. We still have an issue of financial inclusion.
Africa tech startups raised about $195 million in 2018, according to Disrupt Africa. Thus thought to be the most raised since it started tracking funds coming into the tech sector in Africa. And Nigeria hopes it can be a continental leader, with that trend set to continue. Samson Omale, CGTN, Jos, Nigeria.
Well, that's where we leave your business news. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Coming up, why the arts have proven to be a reliable tool to tackle a wide range of social issues in Africa.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
To Somalia now, where young people ushered in the new year in style after a musical performance was staged in Mogadishu. CGTN's Abdulaziz Billo was there and filed this report.
It's events like these that attracts huge turnout among young people in Mogadishu. Various artists grace the stage at this end-of-year music concert, the latest in a sign of a changing city. Farhia Kabayere, a US-based Somali-American singer, entertaining fans to her music, alongside other city-based artists who enjoy huge audience in the local entertainment industry.
It's a great pleasure for me to attend this end-of-year music concert. We were entertained by various artists and it was attended by many young people. Music encourages integration among
Decades of conflict in this country has forced almost an entire generation to remain behind closed doors. But today they've turned out in their hundreds to attend this music concert, promote local talent and take a break from recent political events and the security challenge that continue to plague Somalia.
It's the first time for me to see such a turnout in Mogadishu. We're having a nice time as we welcome the new year in style, and we hope it comes with major improvements for us all.
I came here to witness Farhia Kabayare's music concert that attracted a huge youth population. I've lived all my life in this city and this is the first time I've attended such a gathering.
Authorities encourage such events in Mogadishu and are renovating the National Theatre to give local artists and actors a perfect environment to showcase their performances. It also helps the government counter militant ideology among its youth. Abdulaziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Well, staying in East Africa, Somalis and Ugandans shared their hopes and wishes for the new year. Let's take a listen.
Somalia.
2018 was a great year, and I hope for a prosperous new year in 2019 for my country, Somalia, to take advantage in the ongoing economic and social development in the Horn of Africa region.
I am positive about the new year in Somalia. I'm particularly looking forward to the completion of the draft constitution by the parliament and work towards the goal of being part of the developed world.
You know, we have now into the new year. We have left 2018, we are now in 2019. So I hope this year will be a success for me because I'm well determined to do well in my career and to make this world a better place.
I purpose to be a better leader, yes. I don't want to just stop at being my own person. I want to be a leader for others, for the young girls out there, an exemplary mother and a good wife, and a better woman.
Well, let's take a look back at the Africa art scene in 2018. Across the year, the performing and visual arts were often used as tools to tackle a wide range of societal issues. And as another year begins, calls to return all stolen African artifacts are expected to gain momentum in 2019.
The case for repatriating art looted from the continent during the colonial era received a lot of attention in 2018. African artists, with other key stakeholders, are calling for the return of African artifacts from the West as part of preserving their history.
Decolonizing art history is a fundamental step Africans are going to take, that we have to take, to demonstrate that these artworks, the discourses that were produced on these artworks, wherever they don't fit, we need to dismantle.
On the continent, art continues to provide a valuable source of livelihood. Many have found a way to create opportunities for themselves as well as others through exhibitions, shows, and fairs. Here, they get a chance to demonstrate their talents.
I wanted to create a platform that would place artists on a pedestal, that would see them be acknowledged for the geniuses that they are.
African artists often unleashed their creative prowess mixed with individual passion to help deal with some of the continent's social and developmental challenges.
It's done in Braille, it's completely tactile, and the reason is this because we're doing it for the pediatric children who suffer from early preventative blindness. So what we're doing is we're trying to involve art as a way of opening up doors in their imagination.
And despite graffiti being a grey area in many countries, this art form has found its place on old buildings in South Africa.
It's quite an upgrade too, because some of these buildings are like old abandoned buildings and they're deteriorating. So, I mean, it gives it like some life. It doesn't look like a dangerous area anymore.
Umodit from Nigeria is one of the most notable artists in his country. He decided to use a discarded Danfo, the Nigerian minibus body, as his canvas to tell the evolution of 16-seater vans in Lagos since their introduction in the 70s.
It's, it's like a collection of people from different race, different, occupations, gender, social status as well. So I think it kind of brings people together, and that's what inspired the whole drive to do the Danfo story here.
And some, like Binamungu, have chosen to remind others of their history as a people. The painter speaks to the Rwandan genocide through his pieces.
La plupart de mes tableaux, je mets souvent
I put a red dot in most of my paintings. The red dot is a reminder of the dramatic time that Rwandans lived through when the genocide happened.
Il faut chaque fois le rappeler, dans l'histoire, il y a eu ça.
We must always remember this part of our history because it happened. It teaches us a life lesson. It teaches us humanity, and that is why I put it in.
De l'humanité. C'est pourquoi j'ai mis ce point-là.
Meanwhile, other artists are killing two birds with one stone. They have found a way to earn a living from recycling waste, and in the process, solve the environmental pollution menace. An example is Desiree, who's a known contemporary artist specializing in e-waste recycling.
My number one goal is to try, in my own small way, to reduce electronic waste that is found in the streets and in the bins.
Even as art continues to evolve with many newcomers joining the sector, there's much more to look forward to in the coming years. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Here's what's coming up in your sports news up next. Sadio Mane, Mohamed Salah and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang head the CAF Player of the Year shortlist. Well, let's start your